Hey folks, I'm Matt and welcome to my top 100 vintage board games of all time. Well, we're in the top 30 and it's about to get dirty. Not really, I just knew that rhymed. It sounded cool. Anyway, number 30 is a game that was on my regular top 100 board games of all time. And it was actually at number 29, so it drops one spot here on the vintage board game list. I added to the vintage board game list because, well anyway, let me get to the game first, right? Star Wars Duels. Star Wars Duels. You're playing these beautiful pre-painted miniatures and you got a deck of cards and you're playing or pulling a card and you're just trying to, it's basically battle. There's some cards you can combo and do combos with, and you're basically trying to knock out your opponent from the board. Now you can play this in teams, light side versus dark side and so on and so forth. But there's people from the prequels, characters from the original trilogy, and you can battle them out. So it's really cool. How would Darth Vader go up against Anakin Skywalker? What? How did that happen? Doesn't matter. It's just a game, and it is a lot of fun. Now, this game was, like I said, number 29 on my top 100 board games of all time last year. And after we played it the last time, it immediately dropped off the list. And even dropped so far on the vintage list that it didn't even attain its spot from the previous list, which is a little bit more better and more esteemed in a way, even though I made these vintage top 100s just to put some of my games I really love that are vintage games, not as good as the other games, but they're still fun games on a list of its own. So why did it drop? Well, I found out there are certain characters, and now my nephews know, there are certain characters that have way too powerful cards than other characters. Way too powerful cards. Like right now, everyone and their own mother is going to fight to be the Emperor now because he just has way too many powerful cards. And so because of that, I kind of realized how imbalanced the game can be if you just pick the right characters, I guess, because some just aren't as powerful as others no matter how you stack them up. And so realizing that, I had to drop it a lot on the list. I knew it was immediately going to drop off my top 100 board games of all time. And now I'm putting it on the vintage game list, which is where it should be. Maybe I can find a way to, it's just, if someone picks one certain character, you got to pick a powerful light side character to go up against it. So it kind of forces you to pick a certain character, whoever picks first. And that I do not like. I wish all the players were more, balanced. Now you're saying, well, Matt, could Han and Chewie really beat the Emperor though? No, unless we're talking about the comic book Dark Empire. He really can't, but I don't know. I just think having a more balanced game and then playing the cards would be a lot better. It's still a great game, do not get me wrong. Star Wars Duels, number 30. Number 29 is a classic board game. Can I call it a classic game? I think so. Liar's Dice. Liar's Dice has been around for a long time. It was number 25 on my list. It moves down 4 spots, probably just because of just newer board games being put on this list. But Liar's Dice is so much fun. You're shaking them dice, and you keep guessing higher and higher, dice that are in the game. You don't know until someone calls you a liar. If you end up being right, they lose a die. If they call you out and they were right, you lose a die. And it's basically just an elimination game. There's a million versions of this game. You can get this game for cheap. Heck, you can even make up your own version. Just give everyone some 6-sided die if you have it and some cups that they can't see out of and play that way. It's such a simple game. Anyone can play it. I have a big wooden die that opens up and carries all the little dice in these little nice cups. It's a fun game to play. We play this all the time. And like I said, the only reason it dropped is probably just because of newer games getting put on this list. So great game, my number 29, Liar's Dice. Number 28 is It from the Pit. It from the Pit is from Milton Bradley. When I bought this game, I was like, oh, is this going to be a good game? I got it for like $30, which now is like a steal because the game goes for well over 100. It's such a fun game. You're trying to roll the die and move across this pit. You can go the safe way, which is longer, or the dangerous way, which is quicker. You're just trying to be the first person to get that treasure. You have to land on it by exact count, but once you get that treasure, you win. But watch out. There is It from the Mother-Loving Pit, who has his hand out there, and it's motorized, and he's moving around the board, snapping randomly, and it is random because you never know where he's going to land next. And it's so much fun because when your character gets eaten, you have 4 characters, you just bring out the next one. But if all 4 get eaten, you always scream and yell at the other player to hurry, hurry, hurry. It's got the 3D board too. It looks really well. The games go super quick. We even play our own little game where you set up all your pawns and hit him on the last man standing on the pit wins. So it drops a little bit on my list. It was number 14 last year, so it drops exactly 14 spots on the list. And that's only because I'm getting a little tired of it. This is another game that got requested a whole lot, just like Tornado Rex, It from the Pit. People, if they could only play those two vintage board games whenever they came over, they'd be happy. And although I love both those games, It from the Pit did get played a little too much for my taste. So I'm kind of a little burned out on it, which is why it's staying at number 28 on the list. At number 27 is my grail game, Fireball Island. If you don't know what Fireball Island is, where have you been? You're moving around the board trying to get the jewel and get off the island. There are fireball marbles going everywhere. Now, this game was at number 13 on my list, so it also drops 14 spots here on the list, but Restoration Games just reprinted the game. Now, as of this video, I don't have it yet. I won't have it till the end of the year. I cannot wait to get it in. Now, will I put it on my top 100 board games of all time, or keep it on the vintage board games of all time, since it is still a vintage game in a way, just rethemed? I don't know. I won't know until I play it. I have a feeling if it stays on the vintage list, it's definitely going to shoot up. And if it's really good, you're going to see Fireball Island on my top 100 board games of all time next year. I'm super excited for the expansion. Right now, the original game I love, but there's just other games that I think are better, which is why it drops a few spots on the list. But still, great game. My number 27, Fireball Island. Speaking of games that have moved from my 100 board games of all time to my vintage list, here's another one that made the switch. It's the Trump board game. We got this. I've told this story several times, I think, on the channel, but the first time we played it, it was a joke. We just wanted to play the Trump game because we thought it'd be funny, and we ended up loving the game, and then I got a copy, and every time we play it, we love the game more. Now, it had to drop off my top 100 board games of all time just because I was getting too many games, and this one was losing a lot of ground. So I switched it over to the vintage board game because it counts as a vintage board game, and it miraculously moved up 49 spots, right? Superficiously, I guess I should say it, in no fault of its own. It's just a much better game than a lot of my vintage games. And this is still a game that gets requested to play. The last few times we played, everyone requested. I still have people requesting it when we come over. But it is a really fun game. You're moving around the board. It's kind of blind. You're putting money into these, I call them cash coffins, and then you're trying to bid on the hotels because maybe you have cards that will give you more money if you own that hotel. You're just trying to make it out with the most money, and sometimes you don't even know how much is in that, how much money has been put into that hotel, because if someone lands on it, they had to put some money in there from the bank. So some hotels, which don't cost as much on the board game, could have tons of money put in them because a lot of people stopped on it, and you just lost count of how many people stopped on it in the game. I remember the last time we played, we saw that one of the cheapest hotels price-wise on the board had the most money in it. What? That's just because people kept landing on it. So it's kind of crazy. But anyway, Trump, the board game, super fun. My number 26. Welcome to the vintage list, Trump. Number 25 is TV Wars. TV Wars is another game similar to War of the Networks. I like this game better because it deals with 80s shows. You're basically moving around the board, bidding for 80s shows or movies that are slightly changed, of course, to avoid copyright infringement. But if you get to one of the four corners of the board, you start a ratings war, and you have to put your best shows against everyone else, and whoever is the least, the worst show at that half-hour slot loses and removes that show from their list. And it's a game of elimination. Eventually, if you're the last station standing, you're going to win. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, I love it because it has a lot of 80s shows that I love. I grew up watching, or I know the play on words here, so I get the joke. It does move down on this list. It was number 19 last year, so it dropped 6 spaces. And that's because I realized last time we played the game, there is a huge, well, it's a fluke, I guess, but it can end the game really quick. I think we played this game for 5 minutes and someone won. Here's what happened. Went around the board, everyone landed on shows. This one guy was outbidding everyone, and he was just spending way too much money, and we were laughing at him because, like, dude, you got 5 shows and you hardly have any money now. So we're gonna get the rest of these shows. You just spent all your money at the first few 5 bidding wars, and yeah, you were stupid, man. We're all telling him how stupid he was. And then he landed on a ratings war. And he was the only one with shows. So he won by default. How does that happen? How does it? Surely he admitted he wasn't playing that type of game, but it just happened on his next turn. He hit a ratings war and went, wait, does that mean I win? I was like, oh, dang. It was the quickest game ever. And due to time, and I wanted to play another game, I was like, well, let's just put it up. You know, I know people were upset because we didn't get to play it, but when I see that can happen, I had to move it down just a little bit because of that. But it's still a great game. I hope to play it again soon. TV Wars, my number 26. Oh, no, 25. At number 24 is the board game Star Trek. Star Trek is a great themed game where you're moving across this galaxy. You have these 4 missions. You got to complete 3 of them, explore new galaxies, seek out new life and civilizations, and boldly go where no man has gone before. It feels like Star Trek. Folks, I have looked at other Star Trek games. I've thought about getting other Star Trek games because I do love Star Trek myself. But to be honest, the vintage board game nails the essence of Star Trek for me. I really, really love this game. A good friend of mine turned me on to it, and I have loved it ever since. Now, it does drop a little bit on this list. It was number 17 last year. It dropped 7 spots to here at number 24, and I think that's because the missus who used to love the game does not love the game anymore. And if the missus doesn't love it, then the game will suffer a little bit, as we all know. But Star Trek, the board game, is phenomenal. If you find a copy for cheap and you're a Star Trek fan, you definitely got to get this. I really do love this game. My number 24. Number 23 is a game that has moved up on my list. It was number 31 last year, which means it moves an incredible 8 spots up the list. And yeah, of course the missus loves it. It is Mr. Creepy's Tomb of Doom. In this game, you are playing a ton of you're rolling a die to see which mini game you got to play. If you win out, you get to choose a key and insert it into Mr. Creepy. Now, if the skeleton head goes crazy, meaning his teeth are chattering and his eyes are going buggy, that means you got the wrong key, chunk it. But if you got the right key, it's going to open up the treasure chest and you grab a gold coin. If you can grab 2 gold coins, you win the game. It's a stupid game, but it's very simple to play. I bought it with a box of other games I was more excited to play than Mr. Creepy. In fact, I was like, oh, do I have to get Mr. Creepy? It comes in this 4-pack of all these games. The guy was selling them as a bundle on eBay. And wouldn't you know it, Mr. Creepy has now won out of all of the other 3 games. I think it was Escape the Mad Mummy, Vampire Hunter, and what was the other one? Dragon Strike, which I've already mentioned on this list that were fun games. Mr. Creepy, which is a game I didn't even want, now outranks them all. It is such a stupid but fun game, and that's why it's number 23. Number 22 is the basketball game, Basket. It's basically a 2-player game where you're shooting a little ping pong ball and these little prongs through the basket. Every 5 minutes per half, you switch the board around and then play on the other side of the court, and whoever has the most points after those 2 periods wins. I really love Basket. It's a great game. It did come out for Vintage Board Game Night. It was at the 2-player table one night, and I never got to play it. Doggone it. And that's probably why it dropped on my list. It was number 11 last year. It was almost in the top 10. I loved it so much. But because I didn't get to play it, I dropped it 11 spots at number 22. Maybe that's where it belongs. I don't know. Like I said, 2-player games, I don't get to the table that much, but when they do, I want to play this one. I used to play this one all the time as a kid too, and I have the same version of the one I had as a kid. But Basket, such a fun game. If you find it for cheap, that's another one you should get. Anyway, there it is. Number 22, Basket. Finally, number 21. Just missed out being in the top 20, but you know what? It was number 35 last year, so it has come a super long way. What was that, 14 points up the track? It beat a bunch of other games. And happily, I can say it's How to Succeed in Business Without Even Trying. Now, this is a game that no one will be interested in but me. It's a complete bluffing game based off a show, a movie, an old movie from the 60s, but it's actually off the Broadway musical. And I love How to Succeed in Business Without Even Trying. I love that show. I want to be in that show one day. But the board game is so much fun. You're a guy or a girl, and you're basically bluffing your way up. You have to have certain amount of cards to get to the next level, or you can say, I have the cards, you don't have to show them. unless you get in a showdown with someone, then you have to show them. If you're bluffing, you get bumped down to whatever position you qualify for, which sometimes is at the very beginning. I did that once. I bluffed my way up to C on the board of directors, and then someone landed on me, and I had to reveal that I did not have the qualifications. I got bumped way down. And that just makes the game so much fun, because you never know if someone's lying or not. Because if they aren't lying and they do have the qualifications, then you have to move to, well, not all the way down, but you have to move to the last position that you qualify for. So it can be kind of zany at times. Do I want to call this person out because I'm bluffing too? I love that in the game. And so the more I play this game, the more I can see that. And my nephews who played it, they haven't seen the show. They didn't know it was a musical. They just saw the rules and went, okay. They had the best time calling people out, liars or whatnot. We laughed, had a great time. And here's the kicker. This game, there are people who do theater who play board games with me, and they would love How to Succeed. I have not yet put this out for them yet, but I do plan on doing that sometime soon. And who knows, if they love it, this game will definitely be in the top 20 next year. But until now, it's happy to stay there at number 21. All right, folks, that's all the time I have for now. Come back next time as I go through my top 20 games, vintage style, of all time. See you then.